bring us home with some final points, Kevin. What do you got? What do you got on your mind for this upcoming game?
Well, I just want to talk about the Ken Dorsey point one more time, because when we were having that conversation before, Mike, you were saying how it's not totally on Ken Dorsey because it's there sometimes. It's just that Josh doesn't see it. And I agree. But the point that I was trying to make was this is on Josh. But as a coach, you have to help develop and aid your players here. So that's what I'm saying. It falls on Ken Dorsey, because I was very critical of Ken Dorsey last year. Not so much last night. I didn't agree with that 2nd and 15 draw in overtime, but, it is what it is. But moving forward, if Josh is going to be the gunslinger that he is, it just seems like it's in his DNA. That's who Josh Allen is, that you can't really completely reel him in. So that means that the coaching staff has to do everything in their power to try to tame him. And that means Ken Dorsey has to be as creative as possible so that Josh has to look a certain way instead of going with those deep routes. I liked what I saw where they had Hardy in the backfield a little bit last night, and there was a little bit of trickery. And then we saw a couple screen passes, and I was like, yes, thank you. Do more of that. Because if you slowly go away from it, that's when Sugar High Josh comes back. And I don't mean to go into another rabbit hole here, but since I saw people in the chat talking about this with Brian Dable, it did seem like, even though we were critical of Brian Dable at first, in his last year or two with Josh, it seemed like he had the ability to keep him calm and reel him in. So that's where I think Ken Dorsey needs to take that next step and be able to say, Josh, let's take what the defense is giving us. You can get on base by hitting a single or a double. We don't have to go for the home run every single time. So that's what I want to see moving forward, because if not, it could be a very long and stressful season.
I just want to counter to that quick, Kev. I respect what you're saying, but I think the reel him in point is kind of, I don't like that narrative and that wording that people are discussing right now. I understand it's an easy point. Josh is a grown adult. Like he's a grown adult. He's playing with his instincts on the field. He's making decisions in a split second in his brain. And because of the style of player he is, he's always going to go the more aggressive route. That's part of why we love him. Like it's a lot of the routes when they have people going deep, it's not just to have somebody go deep and encourage Josh to be Sugar High Josh. A lot of times there's a concept to it to open somebody up underneath or to take a corner down the field more. So you do have open space on other parts of the field. Ultimately, Josh knows this scheme. He knows the offense. It's his job to run it. We would never be saying this stuff to Tom Brady. We would never be saying this stuff to Peyton Manning. We're not saying this stuff about Joe Burrow. Ultimately, Josh needs to start playing quarterback the way quarterback is designed in the NFL. I'm okay with all the improv. That's what makes him great. But if he cannot run a basic offense within the scheme, then the Bills are never going to get to their end goal. And the whole reeling him in, Brian Dable was a good offensive coordinator. But let's not forget that Brian Dable was very, very average to below average before he ever had Josh Allen. He had 3 stints on other teams. He got fired after 1 year at 2 of the stops. Had a bottom-ranked defense one of the years and points scored. Another bottom-ranked defense in yards per game. And even the first year that he had Josh Allen in Buffalo, he had one of the bottom offenses in the NFL that year. And even 2019, middle of the pack offense with Josh Allen. Granted, young, developing, raw prospect. The fact is, when it comes to Brian Dable, the Bills' offense wasn't just magically great with him like fans like to remember. There was a lot of people over the course of Brian Dable's time in Buffalo that were calling for him to be fired. And in fact, there was those games that he had against Jacksonville where the Bills couldn't get the ball more than 3 points. There was multiple games during Dable's career in Buffalo where Josh Allen put up stinkers. We don't look back at it now because he's not on our team. He's not coaching on our team. When you have coaches that are gone, you look at how good they are. When they're on your team, you're critical of how bad they are. The issue is Dorsey definitely has issues that he needs to work out, that he needs to fix, and he's far from perfect. And I'm fine with putting heat on Dorsey. But the reel him in is an oversimplification. I don't think any offensive coordinator could reel in Josh and prevent him from playing the style that he's playing. And Dorsey prefers to be upstairs because he wants to see stuff. It helps him call the plays. Dable might have been more comfortable on the field, but I understand what you're saying. I think ultimately this is on Josh deciding for himself. Do I want to be one of the great quarterbacks that has a legacy that can win it all? Or am I going to follow in the footsteps of a Brett Favre and just say screw it on a game-by-game, play-by-play basis? Because the greats like Favre, yeah, he ended up winning a Super Bowl and he got to a second one. The great moments are awesome. But there are some moments where Favre would throw 20-plus interceptions in the league. And if Josh does that in this era, it's not going to be accepted. So I understand the conversation, but I do think it's time for Josh to take more accountability with the faults that are happening.
Oh, for sure. And the last two things I just want to say real quick. One more thing about Ken Dorsey, because again, right now I'm more frustrated with Josh this year than I am with Dorsey. Last year, I was more frustrated with Dorsey than Josh. But right now, last night, a lot of that blame falls on Josh's shoulders. But again, tying these two together because they work off of each other. You know, it's almost like a dynamic duo, the offensive coordinator and the quarterback, Dorsey, Allen, Allen, Dorsey. And the fact that their motto is smart, not conservative, I think those three words can come back to bite the Bills a lot because it's in their DNA. Dorsey's a former quarterback himself, and now Josh is obviously a quarterback. It's in their DNA that they want to throw all over teams. It's like, okay, you're going to throw this on us defensively? Well, watch what we have. So I think they need to be very careful with that. And again, Josh is the one making the decisions on the field. But going back to my point earlier, as the offensive coordinator and as the coach, you have to be able to balance that out. And then the second point that I want to make, going off of that, is that Joe Burrow adjusted to what the defense was giving him last year because they started playing that too high shell. He recognized that, and then he said, okay, I'm just going to throw short to intermediate passes. That's what Tom Brady did his whole career. So if Josh wants to take that next step in his career, that's what he's going to have to do. He's going to have to adjust his game, and Dorsey's going to have to adjust his play calling